Welcome to Queer View Mirror, a show about queer people, by queer people, and for queer people and our allies. This is Don.
And I'm Scott. In today's episode, we are speaking with ERIN LeBlanc, who recently published her best-selling memoir, Stranger in the Mirror. ERIN shares the story of her journey as a transgender woman. She is a university professor teaching international trade law and a passionate advocate for the LGBTQ+ community.
I am very excited on our show today because we have an authentic and open conversation about gender dysphoria, gender identity, and the importance of supporting our community members and celebrating their triumphs in our world today.
Don't go away. We have so much in store for you.
Our guest, ERIN, is a fascinating and lovely woman with a very powerful story. And today, we will have a chance to learn about ERIN's experience, about gender dysphoria, and some of the common challenges of our brothers and sisters who are going through the same thing. Scott, what do you know about gender dysphoria?
Dawn, we've had many changes over the years in our queer culture around gender. Gender dysphoria used to be called gender identity disorder until 2013. It was changed because the word disorder has a negative stigma. Now gender dysphoria reflects the distress caused by a mismatch between one's gender identity and the sex they were assigned at birth. We use the term transgender to describe these members of our community.
And we also know that being transgender has nothing to do with your sexual orientation.
Yeah, that's an important distinction. Transgender people are just as unique and diverse as everyone else in our queer community.
Well, let's dive deep into the conversation. Here is author and advocate ERIN LeBlanc.
Excellent. I'm so excited about our guest today. Her name is ERIN LeBlanc. She's Director of Strategic Program Development and Accreditation at the Smith School of Business at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, and Lecturer of International Trade Law. Thank you so much for joining us today, ERIN. How are you?
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I am very well. It's a beautiful sunny day here, so we're just thrilled.
Excellent. Well, why don't we just jump in? We're
Sure.
so excited to have you. And what have you been working on? What's going on in your world?
Thank you very much for having me here. Yeah, that's a great question, Scott. I've been working on a number of things recently as an advocate in the LGBTQ+ community, focusing mostly in the transgender community, locally, provincially, and nationally. And that includes things as such things as addressing groups of professionals that provide services to the transgender community, including family medicine practitioners, so the interns in family medicine. I recently did a session for ER doctors in emergency rooms around how to provide a more welcoming and safe environment for the transgender community for their emergency room services, as well as law firms, so that they transgender people feel welcome and accepted and safe when they need to seek out their services. So that's sort of what I work on a regular basis. And my book is getting ready to come out. So we're almost ready to publish. So super excited about that. And it's great to have an editor who's passionate about the community, who's connected as a strong ally to the community. And the person doing the artwork for the cover is a member of the community. So I try to bring in as many people of the community on any project that I'm working on. So that's where I'm sort of at right now.
Perfect. Before we started the interview,
Sure.
We were discussing something about you being a advocate. You'd rather be called an advocate
Yes.
for transgender rights.
Yes.
So what are the issues that need to be clarified as far as transgender people are concerned?
A lot of it is educational. I mean, a lot of the speeches that I do, a lot of the questions that I get and sort of the conversations are around what is this thing called gender dysphoria, which is what people who are transgender suffer from, and it's been a medically diagnosed condition, and it is in the diagnostic manual. So this isn't something that's new. It's been around since people have been around, essentially. And it's my point is a lot of people think that being transgender is a lifestyle choice.
Okay.
And that's
so
what
let's slow down a little bit. So you said
sure.
The medical term that has been sort of like acknowledged or
Yes.
recognized is gender dysphoria.
Correct.
So
yes.
tell us a little bit about the dysphoria part.
Sure, absolutely. So gender dysphoria comes about when someone's internal sense of being does not match their external presentation. So, for example, they may have been born with male anatomy, but their gender, which is different than sex. So if your sex defines your anatomy at birth, so you're assigned a sex at birth. Someone looks at you and says, you're a boy, you're a girl, based solely on your anatomy. That's it. So that's what sex
So
is.
anatomy defines sex.
Correct.
As far
Anatomy
as
defines your sex.
The traditional norm is concerned.
Yes, absolutely. Great
But
point.
sex,
Traditional norm.
as you said a while ago, sex is not the same as gender.
Correct.
Could you
Correct.
explain a little bit about?
Yeah, sure. So gender is who you identify in your brain, in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, as who you feel you are at your core. And that is different sometimes for some of us. So actually about 0.5% of the population, their gender at birth is not the same as their sex assigned at birth. So there's a lack of congruity. Yeah, about 1 in 200, right? At various levels. It can be mild, moderate, or extreme as far as gender dysphoria. So that's where your internal sense doesn't match your external sense. Okay?
Okay, I want to clarify a little thing. So
sure.
Sex is anatomy. Is
Yes.
that the same as saying like sex is your genitalia?
Yes.
Because genitalia is part of your anatomy.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And so think of sex as that. Think of gender as this.
Oh, okay,
Who you are in your brain, your heart, your mind, and your soul. And this is where you have this feeling that you're not a man, which would be your typical gender based on your sex. But sex and gender are different, and they're not linked together inextricably. They can be different. And that's what I'm saying. For 0.5% of the population, they are not the same.
Okay, now as far as that logic or that string of logic is concerned,
Yes.
how many genders are there?
Oh my gosh. Gender
We
is
open up
not...
a can of worms.
Yeah, huge count. How much time do we have here?
We can do it in editing, so just go.
Okay, so gender is not sort of binomial. It's not one or the other. It's a spectrum.
Okay,
So
I'm hearing this for the first time, to be honest.
Yeah, so where you land on the spectrum varies with individuals. So you can be either like 100% I am a woman, your gender as a woman, right? Or you can be gender as a man, 100%. But there's a whole range of in between where there are a small percentage of the population where gender for them is on a spectrum. And they don't identify 100% as man or 100% as woman. It's more fluid for them.
Now, you got me curious. Who has defined this then? Is this a medically validated theory or fact or whatever you call it?
It's based on anecdotal evidence as far as the spectrum, where people self-report that they don't feel 100% in one camp. And these are a lot of the folks that will actually use different pronouns. So my pronouns, for example, are her and she. I identify as a woman.
Yes.
Okay, so I identify as her or she. But there are those I know in my community and good friends of mine where they are more fluid, that they feel a little bit like a woman and a little bit like a man, and it can vary a little bit from day to day. And they prefer to use the pronouns they or them. They don't identify as man or woman. They prefer they or them. So it's not as much as how many different types. It's more fluid and on a spectrum.
Where did this line of thinking originate?
Oh my gosh, where did it originate?
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm trying to get myself educated here. I know.
Fair enough.
I run into people who say, well, it's not my job to educate you. Well, whose is it?
Oh, it's 100%.
It's not about educating. It's about, I want to understand. I sincerely want to understand.
Fair. So, I mean, gender dysphoria, as it's now called, has been around ever since people have walked the earth. I mean, that's just the way it is, because this is something you are born with. It's not something you acquire. It's not something you decide and wake up, oh, you know what, today I think I'm gay, or today I think I'm transgender. No, this is something that people have identified from their early days. There are documented cases, and I know personal examples of young children, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of age, that will constantly tell their parents, Mommy, I'm a boy. I'm not a girl. Mommy, I'm a girl. I feel like a girl. And they totally identify with everything about that gender and not their physical sex assigned at birth. So it starts from a very, very young age and goes up till infinity as far as age goes, right? So it's been around for a long time. It has not been recognized or welcomed by a lot of communities until most recently. So, for example, for me, I knew back when I was fairly young that something wasn't right, but I didn't know what it was. I mean, back then in the days, like, practitioners weren't even up to speed on any of this. So, for example, in my particular instance, when I got into my teens and knew that I just didn't feel right, I wasn't happy in my body, I was confused, but I didn't know how to articulate it because I had no one there to help me to articulate that. So many people of my age,
our age,
okay, our age. So in my instance, I was had work done on me to try and figure out what was going on. So they did like assessments for schizophrenia and multi-personality disorder, and bipolar disorder and depression, because something was wrong and they were looking to find a label for it. And and transgender wasn't even on their radar screen.
No.
40, 50 years ago, not even on the radar screen of medical professionals, at least not the ones that I had access to. So the label that did come up for me that they stuck on my forehead was depression, and that was valid, because gender dysphoria does take over your life, because you're constantly struggling with trying to fit into a society that at that time only saw men and women as assigned their sex at birth, male, female, and if there was an incongruity there, if you didn't have that, you didn't fit in. So you're constantly trying to fit in. So I was constantly trying to be a boy, even though I wasn't. I was a girl. I was constantly trying to be a man, even though I wasn't. I was a woman. So,
well, you mentioned earlier that there were 3 elements to consider in this this theory, or if you want to call it a theory, or for lack of a better word, I'll use theory for now. So there's sex, which is your physical. There's gender, which is your mental. Then there's the third element, which you refer to as the sexual orientation or sexuality. Is that the same thing, sexuality and sexual orientation?
Yeah, sexual orientation. We call it sexual orientation.
How does sexuality factor into this whole context of gender dysphoria?
Perfect. Okay, so for the majority of the population, I don't have the exact number, but if you're born male, identified male at birth, and your gender is as a man, typically you're attracted to women. Your sexual orientation is towards women, right? So, but that is, as we know, is not the case, because again, sexual orientation is not a choice.
Yes.
Right? You are born with your sexual orientation, and for many of us, you might be male at birth, identify as a man, as gender, but attracted to men.
Yes, and I think you're gay.
Exactly.
Or homosexual.
Exactly. Or female woman attracted to women, right?
And
so that's the third part. Yeah.
Okay.
Lesbian.
Or a lesbian.
There we go.
Okay.
So for my example, born as sex identified as male.
Mm-hmm.
My gender was as a woman, and I'm attracted to women.
Okay.
Okay, so a lot of people think that it's a lifestyle choice when it's not. It's something you're born with.
Yes.
And you struggle with until you wrestle it to the ground, and that your gender automatically assigns your sexual orientation. If you're a woman, you're attracted to men. If you're a man, you're attracted to women. End of story. Well, no, that's not the case. So now there's three things going on that can act independently of each other. And that messes with a lot of people's heads and belief system. Yeah.
I mean, for me, that really clarifies a lot when you say gender is here, because before I'm old. So when you say boy, it's the gender and the sex. Yeah. But now that you have clarified that, I mean, that makes a world of difference to me.
So think of it as if you had, think of it as if you have a can of peas. Right? So it's peas on the inside, but the label says corn.
Okay, that's a great. The
external doesn't match the internal. Now we can't change the inside, the physical. We can't change the corn in the peas into corn, but we can change the label.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
To get congruity. And now when you see the peas on the label, you know you're interacting with peas. You know when you open it up, you're going to see peas. So now the person has congruity and everyone's happy. And that's what happens with transgender people. For example, my gendered, my external appearance, how I choose to present myself, my gender appearance, matches my internal gender. And for me, because I've had surgeries, matches my physical appearance as well. So I have total congruity now, and now the gender dysphoria is completely gone. My brain is no longer mixed up, because when I was born as a testosterone producing factory.
Right? Of course, because you were a man.
Right, but my brain was pre-wired to look for estrogen. Estrogen receptors were what were turned on. So my brain was starved for estrogen, getting testosterone, and confused. Hence the gender dysphoria that kicks in, and hence the depression that comes in, and it pretty much takes over your life. I mean, most people will say that, if you suffer from gender dysphoria, you are not in control of your life as much as someone who isn't. You're pretty much a passenger on the bus of your life. Gender dysphoria rules what happens. You get anxiety attacks, you get depression, you don't understand what's going on, you don't feel like you fit in anywhere, extreme loneliness. That's all part of the symptoms of gender dysphoria.
That is very interesting. Scott?
Well, ERIN, I know a bit of your story because of our relationship with Daring to Share Global. I was wondering, would you mind sharing the part of your transition from work and when you made that decision to match your inside to your outside, and what that looked like?
Yeah, I mean, so I was diagnosed officially with and this is going to confuse us even more, with what was called at the time gender identity disorder.
Oh my goodness! Okay, it's another term altogether.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll get to that.
Again, gender.
I'll get to that. I'll get to that. So when I was probably in my mid-30s or so it was starting to become a thing. That they changed that to gender dysphoria in, I think, 2003, because it was it's not a disorder. We're not broken. There's nothing bad about us.
So what is the difference between a dysphoria and a disorder? Would you care to elaborate?
I will try.
Okay.
I am not a medical practitioner or an expert in that area. I think the biggest thing is that dysphoria means that there's an incongruity or a confusion.
Okay.
Right? So, and disorder means there's something broken or wrong.
Okay.
We're not broken and we're not wrong. So that was the big thing. So that changed in what's called DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual that is used by medical practitioners to try and categorize things, medical issues.
Okay.
Right. So that's where that comes from. So yeah, so we were talking about a bit more of my transition. So just quickly, I was sort of in my late 30s when I was diagnosed by a therapist who was familiar with this, sort of an avant-garde in that field, and I did have access to his services, which was great. And that was sort of a good news thing, because it suddenly I could now understand what was going on with me, which was a huge relief. But it was also very scary. Like, what is this thing being transgender? And okay, so I'm a woman, and what's that going to do? And, you know, and by this time I had a family and a loving wife and 2 wonderful daughters. And I was scared to death of what happens. And the conversation with my therapist at the time was, you know, if you want to transition, i.e., have your external appearance match your gender, your internal identity, we can do it, but the timing isn't right. So this was in the late 80s, early 90s, right? So they said, you know, society's not ready. They were just still trying to figure out gay, let alone transgender, with zero protections in the law against discrimination of any sort or type. So society's not ready. Your employer is probably not ready. There was no policies there. My family wasn't ready. Financially, I wasn't ready. And I personally wasn't ready mentally or emotionally to make that leap. So I decided then to sit on it and to try and battle my way through it. And with a set of strategies of how to deal with it. And what's that mean? That means dealing with the constant anxiety attacks, the constant questioning, the constant depression. And a lot of times, a lot of people in the community early on are sort of in denial. Like, really? Like, no, I'll just man up. People just tell you to man up, you know, and it's all, you know, what's wrong with you? It's, you know, they're still thinking it's a decision, right? And there's a lot of shame in the community because they're afraid of what's going to happen, especially in, not so much in Canada now. Back then, yes. The US right now, holy bananas. That's a whole other conversation and a whole other show.
Tell me about it.
Right? So I put it on hold. And then it got to the point that the dysphoria took over my life so much that I was going down a very dark rabbit hole. And it got to the point that at one point I put myself in a position where I had about 10 seconds to decide whether or not to survive.
Oh my.
And so I made the decision to survive, and that happened.
That was fabulous. I learned so much. ERIN is amazing.
I know. ERIN has been an inspiration to everyone I know. As an author sharing my own story, I know the courage it took to publish hers. ERIN is already changing lives with all of her work and advocacy. Her story will go even further. Isn't it amazing how much of a difference you can make by being authentic and telling your story?
I know. I can only be my authentic self, and there's nothing more powerful than being proud of who you are and sharing it with the world. ERIN is really a leader within our fabulous queer community, passing on to so many the wisdom of her and powerful experience.
Let's celebrate with a little music, shall we? Here to lift our queer spirits a little higher with music and lyrics is Panamore.
How you doing, Alice? Don't you wanna stay? How's it going, Alice?
I'd love to live this way.
How you feeling, Alice?
These thoughts won't go away.
To be floating here, oh Alice,
Don't we love to play? I've been tripping here, oh baby.
it's all so right and wrong.
I've been tripping here, oh honey.
Why did you wait so long? I've been holding on forever. I thought I'd disappear. I've been waiting here in Wonderland, hoping you'd appear.
Such a lovely kitty.
Stroke me like like you do.
I've got this funny feeling.
Oh, something's changing you. I'll peek into your future. It's perfect, and so are you. You're such a lucky girl, my dear. Watch all your dreams come true.
Wait a minute, baby.
Now what you're gonna do?
Wait a minute, darling.
Are you just passing through?
Wait a minute, honey.
I'm loving all of you. Just imagine, sweetheart, oh, what we could do.
I'm tripping here, oh baby.
It's also right and wrong.
I've been tripping here, oh honey.
Why did you wait so long? I've been holding on forever. I thought I'd disappear. I've been waiting here in Wonderland. I'm so glad that you appeared.
We can all choose to be open and embrace the stories of queer people, learning more than ever that we're all just human.
Well said, as usual. It really helps when your husband writes the scripts. Anyway, let's see what's coming up on our next episode.
Roberta Vandermeer, also known as Robbie Van, is a colorful and talented, celebrated artist with an amazing and inspiring story. In the next episode of Queer View Mirror, we will hear the story of her journey and share her colorful, ambivalent, and inspiring work as an artist. It's going to be another engaging and very interesting interview that you don't want to miss.
Hi, it's Dawn. No, really, it's me. The director asked me to do this without the mask, so there. I've taken off the mask, although I think it feels nice. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that last episode of Queer View Mirror, and you can catch more of the fun stuff that we do on queerviewmirror.com. You can catch full episodes, outtakes, and other stuff you won't find on YouTube or on Facebook or anywhere else. You can go to queerviewmirror.com and find more of the fun stuff that we do and more. So don't forget to check it out, queerviewmirror.com. We will catch you next time on our next episode. See you there!
Queer View Mirror is all about sharing, experience, expression, and empowerment. Queer View Mirror mission is to inspire positive change in the world by showcasing a diverse, inclusive, and innovative global queer community that is authentic and empowering. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to share your story and journey to authenticity, please reach out to us. Send us an email at qvmirror@gmail.com. That's qvmirror@gmail.com. But before you leave, make sure you smash that subscribe button. Please leave a like. If you don't leave a like, they won't feed me. Even though I'm a robot, I do need to be fed. So please, please hit the like button and subscribe. Otherwise, it just won't feed me.